Marie Dubois had 30 seconds before the Nazi firing squad would end her life, but when the hooded resistance fighter stepped from the crowd and shouted 3 words in German, everything she thought she knew about her capture would shatter. Because the truth wasn't just going to save her life, it was going to change the course of the entire war. The rough hemp rope bit into her wrists as October wind whipped through the cobblestone square of St. Nazaire. 8 Mauser rifles gleamed in the pale morning light, their barrels trained on her chest. Her heart hammered like bullets against her ribs. What would you do if you had 30 seconds left to live? The metallic scent of blood still clung to Marie's torn dress, not her own blood, but that of the German officer she'd supposedly murdered 3 days ago in the village cafe. At least, that's what the charges read when Oberfuhrer Klaus Richter himself had dragged her from her cell that morning. Französische Terroristin, the crowd whispered. French terrorist. But Marie knew something they didn't. She'd never killed anyone in her life. She was a school teacher from Nantes, not a resistance fighter. Her only crime had been being in the wrong place when Lieutenant Hans Müller's body was discovered face down in his morning coffee. The executioner's blade pressed against the back of her neck as he positioned her against the wooden post. Cold settled in her stomach like ice water. She could taste the smoke from the nearby chimney, acrid and bitter. Any last words, Mademoiselle Dubois? Richter's voice carried the confidence of a man who'd orchestrated this performance 100 times before. Marie lifted her chin. I am innocent. Richter's laugh emerged like a blade scraping stone. They all say that. The crowd pressed closer, German soldiers maintaining order while French civilians watched with carefully neutral faces. Marie recognized some of them. Madame Rousseau from the bakery. Young Pierre who delivered newspapers. Their eyes held something she couldn't quite read. Fear? Or something else? Ready. Richter's command split the morning air. 8 soldiers raised their weapons in perfect synchronization. Marie closed her eyes and thought of her sister Claire in London, working for the Free French. Would Claire ever know what really happened here? Would anyone? The church bell began to toll 9 o'clock. But as the bronze notes rang across the square, a figure emerged from the crowd like a vengeful spirit. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hood that concealed his face. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent years avoiding detection. Stop! The man's voice boomed in perfect German. She is not the killer. Richter's hand froze halfway to his holster. Who dares interrupt a lawful execution? The hooded figure stepped forward, and Marie caught a glimpse of steel-gray eyes beneath the fabric. Eyes that seemed to burn with secrets. I am the one you seek, he said. Marie Dubois is innocent. The square fell silent except for the whisper of wind through empty windows. Marie's breath caught in her throat. Who was this man? And why would he sacrifice himself for a stranger? But what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about her own story. Richter studied the newcomer with the calculating gaze of a predator. Remove your hood. Let us see the face of such a noble fool. The man's hand moved to his hood, then stopped. First, release the woman. She has suffered enough for crimes she did not commit. I think not. Richter's smile was sharp as winter glass. Perhaps we execute you both. The French seem to enjoy martyrs. That's when Marie made her choice. She would not let an innocent man die for her, even if she still didn't understand why he'd come forward. Don't, she whispered, loud enough for him to hear. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. The hooded man turned toward her, and in that moment, his eyes conveyed something impossible, recognition. He knew her. But Marie had never seen this man before in her life. What would you do if a stranger was willing to die to save you? Tell me in the comments. Richter motioned to his soldiers. "Seize them both. We'll have a double execution today." As German hands reached for the hooded figure, he moved like liquid mercury. His right fist connected with the first soldier's jaw. A sickening crack echoed across the cobblestones. The man dropped like a stone. His left elbow found the second soldier's solar plexus. The sound was wet and final. Marie watched in stunned amazement as this stranger fought with the precision of someone who'd killed before. This wasn't lucky desperation, this was training. Years of it. But 3 more soldiers converged on him, and even the most skilled fighter couldn't face those odds indefinitely. Enough. Richter drew his Luger P08. The black barrel found the stranger's chest. "Move again and I paint the square with your blood." The hooded man raised his hands, breathing hard. A trickle of blood ran from his split lip, but his eyes never left Marie's face. "Who are you?" she whispered. Before he could answer, Richter struck him across the temple with the pistol grip. The man stumbled but didn't fall. "I am the one," he said through gritted teeth, "who has been protecting you for 3 years." 3 years? Marie's mind raced back through memories like pages flipping in a damaged book. The unexplained events that had saved her life. The German patrol that had mysteriously missed finding her hidden in the barn loft. The forged travel papers that had appeared in her coat pocket just when she needed them most. The feeling of being watched, not with malice, but with care. "You don't remember me," the man continued, his voice growing weaker as blood traced a path down his forehead. "But I remember you. August 15th, 1940. The bombing of your school in Nantes." Marie's heart stopped. She remembered that day. The Luftwaffe had targeted the railway junction, but their bombs had fallen short, devastating the civilian quarter instead. 23 children dead. Her classroom destroyed. She'd pulled 6 survivors from the rubble, her hands torn and bleeding, her white dress stained crimson. But there had been a 7th child. A boy with steel-grey eyes and dark hair, trapped beneath a collapsed beam that was slowly crushing his chest. She'd worked for 20 minutes to free him, talking constantly to keep him conscious, her voice the only thing anchoring him to life. "You saved me," he said quietly. "My name is Philippe Moreau. And I have spent every day since then trying to repay that debt." Philippe. The boy whose life she'd saved had grown into this man who fought like shadow and steel. The child who'd whispered thank you in a voice broken by pain and gratitude was now standing ready to die for her. But even as understanding dawned, Richter was losing patience. "Touching," he sneered. "But irrelevant. You both hang for terrorism. Bring more rope." That's when the church bell began ringing again, not the regular hourly chimes, but a frantic, desperate pattern that made every German soldier in the square turn toward the tower. 3 long rings. Pause. 3 short. Pause. 3 long. SOS. Philippe's eyes widened with something Marie couldn't identify. Hope? Fear? "You need to listen to me," he said urgently to Richter. "The real killer you seek isn't French. And if you execute us now, you'll never find him." Richter backhanded him viciously. "Lies. The man who killed Lieutenant Müller," Philippe continued, spitting blood, "is in this square right now. Watching you. And he's about to kill again." But everything was about to change in ways none of them could imagine. A rifle shot cracked across the square like thunder. But it wasn't from the execution firing squad. This shot came from the church tower, and its target was the German soldier standing directly behind Richter. The man dropped, a red flower blooming across his grey uniform. Chaos erupted. Soldiers dove for cover behind wagons and doorways. French civilians scattered like startled birds. Richter spun in circles, his Luger searching for targets. But Philippe didn't run. Instead, he reached Marie's bonds and began working at the knots with fingers that moved like a locksmith's tools. "How?" she gasped as the rope fell away from her wrists. "Because," Philippe said, his voice carrying a weight she was only beginning to understand, "I'm not just resistance. I'm British intelligence. And this entire execution was a trap." Marie's world tilted sideways. "What? The real killer isn't French or German." Philippe's hands found hers, warm and calloused from years of violence. "He's an American OSS agent who's been selling Allied intelligence to the Germans for 6 months. We've been tracking him, and we knew he'd come to watch you die, because you're the only witness who could identify him." Another shot from the bell tower. Another German fell. "Who?" Marie's voice was barely a whisper. Philippe pointed into the crowd of supposedly terrified French civilians. "The man in the brown coat. The one who's moving toward the alley instead of away from the gunfire. The one who's been watching you since they dragged you from your cell." Marie followed his gaze and saw him, average height, unremarkable face, moving with the controlled panic of someone trying to escape without drawing attention. She'd seen that face before. Not in Saint-Nazaire, but in Nantes. At the café where Lieutenant Müller died. He'd been sitting 3 tables away, reading a German newspaper and drinking coffee that never seemed to get cold. "We have to stop him," Philippe said. "If he escapes, he'll disappear forever. And 6 months of intelligence work dies with him." But Richter had finally spotted their position behind the memorial statue. "There! Kill them both!" 3 German rifles swung toward them. Marie saw death approaching in the form of black muzzles and steady hands. That's when she made a choice that surprised even herself. She grabbed Philippe's hidden knife from his belt and threw it with deadly accuracy, not at the Germans, but at the brown-coated figure trying to slip away through the crowd. The blade caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, his hand reaching inside his coat. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small radio transmitter. "He's calling for extraction," Philippe shouted over the gunfire. "We're out of time." The sniper in the bell tower, Philippe's partner, Marie realized, sent another shot into the German ranks. But there were too many of them, and they were closing in fast. "This way," Philippe grabbed Marie's hand and pulled her toward the narrow alley between the bakery and the post office. But as they ran, Marie caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. The wounded American wasn't trying to escape anymore. He was pointing his transmitter directly at the church tower, and his finger was hovering over a red button. "Philippe!" Marie screamed. "The tower!" He followed her gaze and his face went white. "Explosive charges. He's going to bring down the church with our sniper inside." The choice they made next would determine whether their mission succeeded or whether all their sacrifices had been for nothing. Philippe could save his partner in the tower, or he could capture the American agent, but not both. Which choice do you think he should make? The American's finger began to press down on the detonator. But Marie was already moving, her teacher's instincts transformed into something harder and more dangerous. She'd spent 3 years not understanding why she kept surviving when others died. Now she knew. She'd been training for this moment without realizing it. She tackled the American agent just as his finger completed its journey to the button. The explosion that followed shook the entire square, but it came from the wrong direction. Instead of the church collapsing, the German ammunition depot 3 blocks away erupted in a pillar of fire that reached toward the October sky. The American looked at his transmitter in confusion. The frequency had been changed. Philippe appeared beside them, holding a small device of his own. British engineering, he said with grim satisfaction. We've been listening to German radio chatter for months. Did you really think we hadn't found your communication frequency? But just when victory seemed certain, the American agent smiled. You have no idea, he whispered through bloody teeth, what you've just started. The American agent's words hung in the smoky air like a curse. Around them, the square had become a battlefield. German soldiers lay dead or wounded among the cobblestones. French civilians had vanished into buildings and side streets. The church bell still rang its desperate SOS. What do you mean? Philippe demanded, pressing the muzzle of a captured German pistol against the agent's temple. The man laughed, a sound like glass breaking. The intelligence I've been selling? It wasn't just troop movements and supply routes. It was the complete list of every resistance cell in Western France. Names, locations, contacts, everything. Marie felt the ground shift beneath her feet. How many people? 347, the agent said with sick pride. And thanks to your little rescue operation here, the Germans now know their cover is blown. They'll be moving against every cell simultaneously. Tonight. Philippe's finger tightened on the trigger. You bastard! Kill me, the American whispered, and the location of the master list dies with me. Let me live, and maybe, just maybe, I'll tell you where it's hidden. Your choice, British spy. Save your conscience or save 300 lives. That's when Marie understood the real cost of heroism. Sometimes saving one person meant sacrificing hundreds of others. Philippe's hand trembled. Marie had seen him fight with cold precision, but this decision was tearing him apart. She could see the boy he'd once been, trapped beneath rubble, choosing between hope and despair. There's a third option, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. Marie had spent 3 years as a victim of circumstances she didn't understand. But standing in that blood-soaked square, she finally realized something crucial: she'd never been a victim at all. She'd been a weapon, carefully positioned and perfectly disguised. The list isn't hidden, she said. It's memorized. By someone the Germans would never suspect. She looked directly at the American agent. You made one mistake. You assumed I was an innocent bystander. But I was never supposed to be at that cafe the day Mueller died. I was there because Philippe's intelligence network sent me there. To watch you. The agent's face went white. I'm not a school teacher from Nantes, Marie continued. I'm Marie Dubois, formerly Captain Marie Dubois of the Free French Intelligence Service. And I've been deep undercover for 2 years, building a network you never knew existed. Philippe stared at her in amazement. You knew? This whole time, you knew who I was. Marie nodded. The boy with steel-grey eyes and a scar on his left temple from flying debris. The boy who whispered thank you in perfect English, not French. I've been watching you watch me for 3 years, Philippe. Waiting for the right moment to make contact. The American agent made one final desperate move, pulling a hidden knife from his boot and lunging at Marie. But Philippe was faster. The gunshot echoed across the square with finality. The agent crumpled to the cobblestones, his secrets dying with him. But it didn't matter anymore. Marie had been recording everything through a hidden transmitter of her own. British intelligence would have the frequency locations of every compromised resistance cell within the hour. As German reinforcements finally arrived at the square, they found only bodies and blood. The 3 figures who had orchestrated the entire operation had vanished like smoke, leaving behind only a message chalked on the memorial statue: the truth will set you free, but first it will destroy you. Philippe and Marie emerged from the sewers 3 blocks away, covered in grime but alive. Above them, the church bell finally fell silent. Was it worth it? Philippe asked as they made their way toward the safe house. Marie considered the question. They'd saved 347 lives, but at the cost of revealing their own covers. They'd stopped a double agent, but started a war within a war. Ask me in 10 years, she said finally. When we see who wins. But as they walked through the narrow streets of Saint-Nazaire, neither of them noticed the figure watching from an upstairs window. A woman with silver hair and eyes like winter frost. She picked up a telephone and dialed a number in Berlin. "This is Nightingale," she said in perfect German. "The Du Bois woman is not who she claims to be. And neither is the British agent with her. I'm forwarding their real identities now." She paused, watching the two figures disappear around a corner. "No, Herr Oberfuhrer. The game isn't over. It's just beginning." Because in the shadow war between Nazi Germany and the Allied intelligence services, victory and defeat were separated by the thinnest of margins. And sometimes, the greatest threats came from the people you trusted most. The next morning, Philippe and Marie would wake up to discover that their greatest enemy wasn't German, British, American, or French. She was the one person they'd never suspected. The one person who'd been helping them all along.